Alright, so welcome back. Today we're going to be doing the next step in getting our prints ready for presentation, and that means to mat the image. And that basically means we're going to be putting a black border, or depending on your work, maybe it's another color, but basically a frame that goes around the image in order to make the design that you've created pop. So you're going to need a few materials here. You're going to need a print that you have already signed. So if you haven't done that signatory work yet, please go take a look at our other video on how to sign a print. And you're also going to need an X-Acto blade, a ruler, which I've got here, and some scrap paper, a piece of, in our case, we're going to use Bristol board, a sharp pencil, and a Sharpie as well, possibly, and a pencil sharpener. So you want to make sure that your pencils are very sharp so you can get precise measurements. Alright, so here we go. So the first thing we need to do is to measure out our print. Okay, and we need to get two different dimensions. The first dimension that we're going to get is the width. Alright, and I primarily work in inches when I'm doing this type of work, but I will also jot down some of the centimeters as well. Right. So what I'm looking at here is a width of approximately 4.5 inches, and I'm going to make a note of that here. So width is 4.5 inches, and if I take that in centimeters, I'm going to get a measurement that is approximately 11.5. Right. I don't want to get overly precise, right? I'm not going to go down to the millimeter with this because there is a little bit of room in order to kind of allow for that little bit of a lack of precision at this point. Okay, so I've got my width, I've got my height, which is going to be how tall the image is, and the reason that we needed to make sure that the artwork was signed already is because that is part of our measurement that we need to be capturing as well. Okay, so I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to measure it out, and my height is approximately 6.5 inches, and if I do that in centimeters again, I'm going to be taking a look at approximately 16.5 centimeters. Okay? So I'm going to need these measurements because I need them in order to figure out how big of a window I need to cut into my piece of paper, and I also need them in order to figure out how big the actual piece of map board or Bristol board is that we're going to be using. Right. So if I have a quick illustration here, and the part that I'm coloring in black is the printed image and the signatory line underneath. Okay. When I'm cutting out my window, I want to make the window a little bit bigger, and I'm going to use about a quarter of an inch or half a centimeter distance between the edge of the print, okay, right here, and the frame, and that's going to create a little bit of a white border that goes all the way around the printed image. And then I need the total dimensions of a piece of paper, which are going to be out here. Okay? I'm going to use my pencil really quick, and I'm just going to kind of shade in the matte area for you as well, so that we can kind of see what we're working with, right? So the pencil is going to become the matte, the Sharpie line is the edge of the window, and the area that is filled in solid with Sharpie, that's the printed image. Okay, just for illustration purposes. Here we go. Okay, so we need to figure out the total size of the piece of paper, right, the black paper, in order to start cutting out the mat, right, and that's going to be my total width. Right, so if I'm looking across here, I know that the image is 4.5 inches, and I want a 0.25 inch gap between the edge and the mat. I want the same thing on the other side, right? 0.25 inches is the same as 1/4 inch, or approximately half a centimeter. Okay? And then the width of the frame that I'm looking for is about 2 inches on either side. Okay? So my total width, right, is 2 plus 0.25 plus 5 plus 0.25 plus 2. Right, and when I start grouping these together, 4.5 plus 0.25 plus 0.25 is 5 inches. I got 2 inches and 2 inches left over on the other side, so that gives me a total of 9 inches. So my total width is 9 inches. Right, and then I need to do the same thing in order to determine the height. Right, so my height total, right, goes from the top all the way down to the bottom, and we already know the top dimension, or the height of the image, is 6.25 inches, and we want to do the same thing in terms of creating that little bit of a buffer space of 1/4 inch. So that's 0.25 plus 0.25, and then up at the top I'm looking at 2 inches, and in order to help visually weight the print, we put a little bit of extra mat down at the bottom, right, at 2.5 inches. Not a lot, just a little bit, and that just helps to visually ground the entire composition. Right, so when I'm looking at these numbers, I'm doing the same thing. I've got 2 inches plus 0.25 inches plus 6.5 inches plus 0.25 inches plus 2.5 inches. Right, and that gives me my total height. And if I start grouping this together again, I get 7. Right, when I add these numbers here together, and I'm left with 2 inches and 2.5 inches. That's 9 inches plus 2.5 inches equals 11.5 inches for my total height. All right, so that gives me the overall size of that sheet of paper. All right, so I'm going to set these measurements aside. They're just going to be outside of the screen for you, and now I'm going to be moving over and using my pencil. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is I need to measure out the width of my paper, right? And I may have actually cut this just to the right size, just by chance when I was over at the paper cutter. Okay, so I do have 9 inches across the width, right? And I need 11.5 inches. Right? This one's a little bit too short, so I'm actually gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna go cut a larger sheet of paper so that we get the right size. Right? Sometimes it happens, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I'm back. Okay, I just cut off a large sheet of black Bristol board over at my paper cutter, and knowing that I needed these dimensions here, I've already tried to cut these out as best as I can. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to measure out my 9 across the top. Right, and just make sure that you can see. So I take my 9, this is a funny little trick, right? Not every ruler actually starts at 0. In this case, the 0 is slightly inset from the end of the ruler. So I gotta make sure that I line the 0 up with the edge of the paper, and I'm gonna put a little tick mark down at the 9, right? And I'm gonna do the same thing further down the page, and I'm gonna mark out 9. So this is going to give me my width. Right, once I have those 2 marks established, right, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to place my pencil on one of the 2 marks. Oh, it's up here, and sort of tilt the ruler in. Let's see, get this in again. Right, so I've got a pivot point, and I'm going to line up the top edge of the ruler. Right, and once I've done that, right, I'm not even going to bother marking it with a pencil because I know it's going to be a straight line. And so I'm going to just take this, and I'm going to take my X-Acto blade, holding it on a fairly shallow angle to make sure that I get a good clean cut. And you'll also notice, right, I'm going through, I think it's going to be 3 times. Right, and going nice and slow is going to make sure that you're going to get a nice clean edge. Right, if you keep your knife too vertical and you put too much pressure on it, you can end up tearing the paper, and then it looks like a mess, right? And we want to make sure that your work looks amazing, and that means also making sure that you are cutting very cleanly. Okay, so I know again that the total height of this image is going to be 11, so I'm going to mark out lining up the 0 at the edge of the paper, and again the height is 11.5. So I'm going to double check this. Yeah, so I measured that one at 11. Okay, go back. I needed 11.5, and now I'm going to go here again. Yeah, it's 11.5, so I know that my measurements are right. Right, using that rule of measure twice, cut once. Okay, I've got my knife on one of the markings. I use that as a pivot to line it up with my other marking. Okay, and again, same thing, holding the knife on a fairly shallow angle. I'm going to pass over the paper 3 times, and you're going to feel when the paper lets go. Actually, I went 4 that time. Right, so that I can get a nice clean cut. Okay, so I've got some scraps. I'm just going to tear that off, throw this piece in the recycling. This one is still good, so I'm going to hold on to that for future use. Right, and now it's time to start actually creating the window. Right, so again, making sure that I've got a sharp pencil. Right, so this is why I wanted you to have the pencil sharpener. You need really precise lines for this. Right, so on the side that is not clean, right, so this is going to be our back. So I've got a couple little markings here. So this is going to be the back. I'm going to label the top with a T. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. I'm going to put it in with a Sharpie as well, just so that you're able to see that on the video, just so that I always remember which side is up, because remember that the top and bottom measurements are slightly different. Okay, so if I go through now, I need to measure out the opening for the print. Right, from the top I know that I want 2 inches, okay, or approximately 5 centimeters. It's kind of up to you there. And once I have those 2 markings, this time I am going to go in and I'm going to use the pencil, and I'm going to draw pretty much across the entire width of the mat. Right. Now I'm going to go down to the side. The side is also 2 inches. So in this case I'm lining up with the 2, and now I'm making sure to mark at the 0, the 2, and the 0, and I'm going to take my pencil here and use that as a pivot. Right, and once I know that's in the right spot, I'm going to draw pretty much now the entire height. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Right, and again, pivot to line up, and then draw my line through. Right, this is where I have to remember where the bottom is, because the bottom is a different measurement. Right, it's 2.5. So I'm going to take my ruler, again, line up with the 0, measure out my 2.5 inches on the 2 sides. Right, and the reason that I need to do 2 markings is because if I only do 1, I can't make sure that the line that I'm drawing is actually going to be parallel to the edge of the paper. And if all of your cut lines are kind of wonky, it's not going to look good in the end. So when I'm done marking this all out with pencil, I'm going to just go in and just kind of do a quick visual and make sure that all of the lines look like they are parallel to the edges. Right, to get that cleanliness that is so important. Okay? When it's time to start cutting, okay, I'm going to recommend that you keep the ruler, okay, on the part of the mat that we want to keep, and that's the outside part. So this way, if for some reason the knife slips, right, you're coming into the garbage part of the mat, and you're not going to end up having to restart the whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to use my knife. I'm going to make sure that I'm kind of lined right up, and I'm going to very carefully go through, and I'm going to probably take a few more passes than I did when I was cutting the outside dimensions, because I want to make sure that these edges are really, really nice and clean, as they're going to be right beside the final print. I'm also being extremely careful to not extend the cut past where the lines intersect in order to get a really nice clean corner. I find it easiest to just continually rotate the paper. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to place my knife in order to create that pivot, and then I'm going to go in and I'm carefully going to draw the knife towards me on a slight angle in order to make sure that I get a clean cut. And when I'm through, right, it should just kind of pop up and be ready to come out. Okay, so rotate once more. I'm going to place the image, or sorry, not place the image. I'm thinking too many steps ahead. I'm going to place the knife, bring that across, and again draw it down towards me. Right. Again, making sure that I'm doing multiple passes so that I get a nice clean edge. Okay, so if I've done this well, I should be able to just pull that up, right? I'm not having to tear at the paper in order to get this out. And I'm going to repeat this one last time, lining up my ruler with the pencil markings and carefully drawing the knife and slowly making multiple passes. Okay, so if I've done this well, this whole thing should just pop right out. Okay, so this allows me to create the opening or the mat for the final image. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to place that over top, right, trying to make sure that I get a even amount of white space all the way around. Once you have that finished up, I'm going to grab some tape. Sorry, just got to reach out of the picture space here. Okay, so masking tape we're going to use. It's not archival in any way, but it's something, it works for our learning purposes. If you're doing professional prints, you'd be using an acid-free archival tape. Now, I think my print is still wet because I've been working on this particular project all morning, and it hasn't had a full time to dry. Okay, so there's a couple of options to making sure that you get a clean or even border all the way around. Number one would be to kind of line it up and put this up against a window, so it's kind of hard for you to see on the screen, but as I'm holding this up to the light of the windows, I can see the edge of the mat and the edge of the print at the same time, so I can kind of line that up and then tape this into place on the back side. Okay, so that's going to be the last step for you, right? You can do that on a window, you can do that on a light table. The choice is yours. Okay, so that's the basics of matting your prints in order to kind of help give them a little bit more pop. And actually, now that I'm seeing this particular image with the black frame, looks quite a bit better, right? I'm starting to be able to see the face with a little bit more clarity as well. Okay, so good luck. If you have any questions, right, please make sure that you're asking, and good luck. Can't wait to see what you're able to put together.